Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion with WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, and editorial board. We first start off with the pregame show, where we introduce our panel members for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and then give you the latest USC football news. First, let's meet this week's panelists. Marc Kulkin, WeAreSC columnist who writes the Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways, in addition to regular season football and basketball practice reports. Chris Arledge, former William Jewell College defensive back and team captain, WeAreSC columnist who writes the popular column Musings with Arledge and is a graduate of the USC Law School. And we welcome Steve Bisheff, legendary sports writer and former columnist for the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, San Diego Tribune, who also spent 24 years as an award-winning columnist for the Orange County Register. Steve has also authored several books, including the well-received Fight On, The Colorful History of USC Football, and Always Compete, a reflection on the Pete Carroll USC era. He's also a member of the USC Athletic Hall of Fame, a graduate of USC, and is a former contributing writer and columnist for WeAreSC.com. Greg Katz, that's me, your host and moderator of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and a weekly WeAreSC columnist who writes the obvious and not so obvious, and IMHO Sunday. Before we kick off this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, here is the latest USC football news as of today's Monday taping. On Monday, the 2023 College Football Hall of Fame ballot was released, and 3 former Trojan All-Americans were on the ballot. The 3 are former offensive guard Jeff Riegel, safety Mark Carrier, and running back Reggie Bush. More discussion on this during halftime of Inside the Trojans Huddle. And in the release of the first college football magazine rankings, the Trojans are pre-ranked number 9 in Athlon's College Football Magazine and number 22 in Lindy's College Football Yearbook. In ESPN's way too early college football rankings, USC is the number 4 team in the country, and we'll discuss that in the first quarter of the huddle. The balance of the freshman class of USC moved into their USC living quarters on campus this weekend. Those who moved in are punter Atticus Bertrams, linebacker Garrison Madden, edge rusher Devon Tompkins, corner Fabian Ross, safety Zion Branch, and running back Rayleigh Brown. And the Trojans, who are in real need of future offensive linemen, got some good news this weekend when class of 2023 5-star offensive tackle Francis Mauigoa from IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida, released his final 6 choices. They are as follows: Alabama, Florida, Hawaii, Miami, Tennessee, and USC. And deadline for those support groups that are part of the Trojans Athletic Fund, TAF, and Trojans Football Alumni Club, TFAC, that are planning to attend Salute to Troy on June 18th. The RSV deadline is next Tuesday, June 14th. And finally, former Trojans running back Keenan Christon has officially enrolled at San Diego State. And finally, friends, WeAreSC's Inside the Trojans Huddle greatly appreciates your viewer and listenership, and we appreciate and encourage those of you watching on sites like YouTube to click on the red subscriber button and also the like buttons. It's greatly appreciated, and it is free. All right, it's time for the opening kickoff on our first quarter topic. With the recent USC roster addition of Jordan Addison, the 2021 Biletnikoff Award winner, as the nation's best wide receiver, the preseason rankings of the Trojans have fluctuated dramatically in some preseason polls. ESPN has USC preseason, that's the number 4 team in the country, which was outside the top 10 before the Addison addition. And speaking of addition, Athlon magazine released its top 25 preseason poll, and the Trojans are ranked number 9 behind number 8 Utah and in front of number 10 Oregon. However, Lindy's College Football Yearbook has the Trojans as the number 22 team in the country to start the 2022 season. So, panel, with all that information, do you think the addition of All-America wide receiver Jordan Addison is a fair reflection of the preseason rankings of USC as primarily a top 10 team? Is it justified, or are the Trojans overrated? All right, as we always do in the first quarter of Inside the Trojans Huddle, we start off with Marc. So take us away, Mark. What do you think?
Yeah, well, we're gonna take ESPN as the outlier and we'll throw that away. They're not the number 4 team in the country. Is there a difference between number 10 and number 15? Marginal. So, if you want to slot USC anywhere from 10, 15, 16, I'm fine right there. When you look at their free agent offseason acquisitions, you brought in literally a potential Heisman winning quarterback, the reigning Bolitnikoff winning wide receiver, and you're returning an offensive line that is already being discussed as, they're going to be fairly good just based on experience and playing together. So you combine all that, everyone anticipates them scoring a lot of points this year. You brought in 2 running backs that they're going to be featured. They fit this offense very well. And again, we've talked about this on previous shows. If USC's defense can just improve on last year by 10 points a game, 12 points a game, they should outscore everybody. So yeah, I'm fine. Again, anywhere from 10 to 15 preseason, who cares? That's all for the guys who are trying to project I was right early so they can say I told you so down the line. Those things fluctuate too much.
Do they fluctuate too much, Chris Arledge? Where do you see it?
I think Athlons has it about right. I think USC is probably around the number 9 team in the country. ESPN's ranking of number 4 is too high. Until USC shows that it can play defense, that's too much. And they'll be better defensively. But, Mark said, if they only improve by 10 points a game, ordinarily improving 10 points a game is dramatic. But being that USC gave up, what was it? 70, 80 points a game last year. Maybe they can do that. Look, the offense is going to score a ton of points. The schedule is manageable. Notre Dame away from South Bend and with a new quarterback, that's a winnable game. You don't have to go on the road to Oregon. USC is going to win 10 games. So, yeah, they're a top 10 team, but they are not yet a playoff caliber team, I suspect.
Steve Bisheff, welcome aboard. Do you suspect they're a top 10 team? How do you see it?
Obviously number 4 is crazy, I think. I would rank them somewhere between 9 and 22 at the start. I think, around 15. I think that's fair. There's still too many questions. We haven't seen anything how we know about Lincoln Riley, but we don't know how he's going to adjust immediately, how this team is going to look. Certainly on paper, the weapons are there. This could be the best receiving core, 1-2 starting receivers since Marquise Lee and Robert Woods, I think, has a chance. So, and the quarterback certainly looked great in the spring game. I think there's reason to be excited, and reason for a lot of enthusiasm, but I don't think you can call them a top 10 team until we see more.
All right. Well, I'll chime in and say that I don't think they're a top 10 team either. But I do think they will crack the top 10 because of the schedule that Chris alluded to. The question is if they do crack the top 10, can they stay in the top 10? And that's something we'll find out almost immediately at Utah experience. That'll be kind of a hump game, and then we'll see where they can go from there. But until they have it show me that they have a defense that's not going to be a sieve, that they can stop the rush, that their secondary can stop the passing of the teams they'll play. They're going to try to outscore people. I get it. They will outscore a lot of people, but I don't see them as a top 10 to begin with. I don't see them as number 22 either. I will tell you that. I think that they're a lot better than number 22. If somebody said pick a number, Katz, what do you think it's going to be? I would go with 12 at the point, knocking on the door of the top 10, and then see how it all plays out. But we'll get an idea when they go to Stanford to see, somewhat of, a good coach, see what they're going to do against them. So it's a lot of, yes.
I think we have to remember, for all the great offensive teams Riley had at Oklahoma, he did have some problems on defense there. There were a lot of SEC teams, especially, that really ran it up on his teams at Oklahoma. So there are questions about that too, how he can build the defense. So I think that's why you have to be a little cautious.
So let me ask you this. Since you brought it up, Steve, is Alex Grinch under the microscope because of what happened in Oklahoma? Is he going to be on a short leash, so to speak? I don't know if that's the right term I want to use, but will he be under scrutiny? Let's put it that way.
Oh, I think he'll definitely be under scrutiny.
Chris, what do you think? You're
Well,
a defensive
obviously,
guy.
I mean, look, Lincoln Riley is arguably the best offensive coach in the country. Ryan Day might have an argument too, but he's there. The question is whether USC is going to be able to play defense. So obviously Grinch is under the microscope, and I think he knows that. By the way, Greg, if I understand your position, you're saying USC is not a top 10 team. They're 12. Really? I mean, the difference between 10 and 12 isn't all that dramatic, is it? You made it sound like it was crazy that they'd be in the top 10 and then you slot them in at number 12. What's going on, man?
You know, anything that can make you happy. You had a tough day in court, I imagine, today. By the way, did you win?
Well, it's not over yet. It's dragging
Okay,
on forever.
and that's my point. It's never over. So they're at number 12. We'll see what happens if they can get into number 10. But that was I think you made a good point there. Mark, is there anything you want to add before we get to the second quarter?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, let's move on. All right, second quarter. We begin the second quarter with this question. While the Lincoln Riley hire has made a seemingly 180-degree U-turn for many USC fans for their support of USC football in 2022, panel, do you think that the USC administration believes that past USC fans' deep frustrations are now in the rearview mirror and a thing of the past, or are they still wary of upsetting the Cardinal and Gold apple cart? Steve Bisheff, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think they're hoping, I think that they're at a point where they know that Lincoln Riley has made USC football relevant again. I think that's the number one thing he's done since he was hired. And we knew he would do that. But, as far as the rest of it, I think they sense that people are excited and they're happy about that. But they're a little wary, I think of being shell-shocked for the past few years. They want to see it. They want to see the crowd start coming and filling up the place again and see that excitement. And, we all hope they do. And I think there's a good chance they will, but I think they're just a little wary still.
Mark, are you still a little wary about what's going on? Do you think that maybe there's a little overconfidence on behalf of the administration after the big Riley hire?
On behalf of the administration, overconfident? No, I think they're ecstatic. As far as the fans, maybe, as far as I'm concerned, there's a little bridge here back to our first quarter question that we ended with. Lincoln Riley's making what, 11 million a year? How long does he want to stay married to Grinch and his defense if that's the concern? So if I'm wary, it's with the defense. And how long will Lincoln stick with his friend rather than, all right, you know what? They're paying me a lot of money. I got to get this thing turned around. In other words, don't be Lane Kiffin, great offensive mind, and stay dedicated to your dad too long, which was part of his problem and led to his demise.
Chris, is the administration too overconfident, or are fans still wary? What's your take on it?
Look, we've been suffering for years where we didn't have anything to watch that wasn't just awful. I mean, last year especially, just getting through the games was a chore. It felt like a job that I hated. So the question is, when you have USC fans that haven't eaten for 6 or 7 years, and now you're taking them to a very appealing buffet, are they going to fill their plates? The answer is yes. Of course they're going to fill their plates. People are excited, and they should be excited. USC football is both relevant and interesting for the first time in a very long time. I mean, Clay had some teams that won some games, but they weren't terribly interesting, and you never really felt like there was a chance to get into the elite, right? Even if he would win the conference or go to the Rose Bowl, you could always tell the separation between USC and everybody at the top was dramatic. So USC fans are starving for something good to eat, and so I don't think it's a problem the first year. They're going to be there and they're going to be excited. Now, he needs to produce, right? He needs to win, because that honeymoon will only last so long. But I think he is going to win, and so I think the excitement will carry over.
All right, well, I'm going to take a more conservative view on it. I don't think SC fans, at least the ones I've talked to and I respect, I think they're very cautious in their enthusiasm. I think there's two issues here. There's USC, the football program, and USC getting money. Example is that, okay, strike when the iron's hot, so to speak. Salute to Troy is an example of this question of, are they going to try to gouge us on Salute to Troy? Now, I could be wrong on this, so I'll admit that I could be wrong on this. I thought Salute to Troy would be open to the general public as well as the support groups. I watched the short videotape of Mike Bones saying, you know, we're really excited. We want to see all of you there. I haven't seen anything directed at fans coming to Salute to Troy. I understand the TFAC, the alumni club. I understand the fundraising group, but there doesn't seem to be any tables, to my knowledge, that are open to the general public. And, you know, I look at the fact that, okay, they made one great hire, at least it appears to be a one really great hire. But what about if they did make that hire? What was your feelings on the way things have been conducted administratively the last 7, 8, 9 years? And so I'm kind of saying, okay, I like the football end of it. I like what you did, but be a little careful when you start. It wouldn't take much for USC fans to take a big step backward. And I don't mean from a win-loss standpoint. I think everyone's pretty realistic about where we are. Happy, but realistic. But if you start really going after the money, and that distracts people, they'll you know what they'll do? They'll say, okay, I'll watch the games on TV. I'll support the football team, but I'm not giving a one more penny. And I think they have to be very careful how they approach it and what kind of, I just wish they would have opened it up to the general public somewhat. I would have wished they could have done it on the floor of the Coliseum, but I realize that that would have been difficult for maybe older people, you know, going down, 50 steps, but having to return 50 steps to get to street level. But it was just something that I thought, but I think it does warrant conversation, and hopefully the two separate entities will meet properly, the football end of it and the financial end of it. So
I was also disappointed by the Salute to Troy thing. I mean, this is an example of this first time in many years when I wanted to give them my money. I wanted to go,
right.
but apparently I can't, even though I'll be in LA that weekend. So that's a little bit disappointing, but I guess it shows that they don't need to open it up to everybody to raise the money they want. I don't know.
well,
I've been in the past. Has it always been closed to the media, Steve?
well, I think you make a really good point here, Mark. Usually the media has not been given comps. Okay.
I'm not even talking about comps. Have they been allowed to purchase a ticket if they wanted to go?
Yes.
Okay, because the way it's been explained, the event is not intended for the media, is how it was explained, which is kind of vague. Is like, do you want us there? Do you not want us there?
Let me ask you, just so I'm just for information, as someone in the media, as somebody in the athletic department told you it's not for the media to attend?
I expressed interest about the media attending, and the response I received was, this event is not made for the media. It wasn't a no, it wasn't a yes, it was just one of those vague, this event isn't intended for the media.
It was ambiguous, is what you're saying.
It was a USC response.
Well, my opinion is, and this goes back to the question, they have a chance to really make up for all the blunders in the past. Okay. And they have had more than a couple. I mean, I don't think that Dr. Fulton is out of the woods, but she made a great decision and she should be happy about it. I think Bone loves this type of stuff, the athletic director. He likes to toot his horn. I get that. I'm all for that. He's a raw guy. But they need positive publicity while they've got the momentum going. I see nothing. If I was a sports information director, which I'm not, I would make a highly big suggestion that the media get comped to go. Okay. There's so let me use you as an example, Mark. Okay. A positive example.
Sure.
Okay. Mark likes to talk about who kind of like who's who, a socialite type of view of celebrities that might be there. what's Traveler doing? I mean, people love that stuff. I did it for years. I know they like that stuff. It's the type of stuff that you want people to know what's going on. This should not be exclusive. It should be inclusive. And the media can provide that.
I think a lot bigger issue would be closing the media off at practice and not letting the parents in. If that's going to continue, I think that's a terrible decision.
They've been taking this gamble of trying to create this, this anticipation for everyone. Show up for Rice. You've been waiting to see. You're right, Steve. Spring camp, the parents were treated like everyone else. I saw the actual email, and they use those words, like everyone else, literally. I'm with you, Greg. I'm with Chris. They're doing Spirit Salute to Troy in June, which is new. It's usually the end of fall camp, leading right in. They introduce the team captains. You got the song girls. This is a made for everybody type of event.
Agreed. Why
they're doing it in June? With the whole NIL, this is look. I hate to be the cynic here, but this is a money grab. This is hey, donors, you're here. We're passing around the hat. How much can you put in? We got some collectives we got to put together. That's what this event's about this time.
Well, if it is about that, it goes back to the story that I wrote on IMHO Sunday, where I went bullet point by bullet point about how much you could get for $10,000 or what have you. And the NIL thing is an excellent point. I think that they have to be very careful on what they're doing. I would say, man, if you got great publicity right now, part of the reason that's being held in June, I got to think, was a decision by Lincoln Riley, because that's their big recruiting weekend. They really want to show it to those recruits. Plus, if you want to look at a secondary situation, you'd say, well, traditionally, Salute to Troy has been a week or two before the opening game. Lincoln Riley may, from his viewpoint, and he's entitled to it, it's a distraction to my team. It's in the middle of, we're just really starting to roll and feel it. We're within 2 weeks. I don't want to go there with the rah. It's almost like a climax before we're really getting to the thing.
I think all the decisions are Lincoln Riley's.
Okay, yeah, I see no reason.
You've made this big move. You've given him all this money, and he knows he has the power. So he's going to have it. He's going to have Salute to Troy when he wants it. He's going to shut off the press if he wants to. That's what you got to live with. You paid the price, and now you're going to have to live with what he does.
You can shut the media down in Norman. I don't know if he's going to play that card here in LA.
It's old school. It's silly.
If he wins, he can get away with anything.
If he wins, he's not going to want to keep the media away. His ego won't allow that to happen.
It's like Chris.
I don't know. I don't think.
If he wins, it doesn't matter. If he wins, the public could care less whether we get to practice.
I'm guessing Nick Saban does what he wants with the media, because if you win enough, you can do whatever you want. Exactly. But Lincoln Riley, if you're listening, and I hope you're not, I would like a ticket to Salute to Troy. So give me a call. Give me a ticket. I want to go.
What's that thing where they raise money? GoFundMe? Do we have to start GoFundMe for Chris Harley?
No. I would be willing to pay for it. It doesn't have to be free.
Me
just
too.
Want to be able to go.
If I can get the authorization, I will buy tickets for all four of us.
All right.
Okay. Let's put that. I don't know what it is on the counter, but everyone watching and listening, Kulkin has said he will pay for us three to go. It's on him.
If the media is allowed to attend.
If the media is allowed, but apparently we don't know what that means. So it's something that we'll it's an interesting topic. Let's put it that way. All right. It's halftime. Well, it's like we just can't get away from this type of topic, but I'm willing to put it on there because I think it's important. It's halftime. And as previously mentioned in the pregame show, the 2023 College Football Hall of Fame ballot was released on Monday, and 3 former Trojan All-Americans are on the ballot. Former offensive guard Jeff Riegel, safety Mark Carrier, and running back Reggie Bush. So, panel, here it is. I actually have a vote in this thing, so I'm interested to hear your takes. Ranking 1 to 3, with 1 most likely to be voted in for induction, 2 meaning possibly, and 3 least likely the chance of getting voted in. How would you rank the 3 people that have been nominated for USC. And when you give your order, your pecking order, explain to me why, and to the listeners, of course, you went with the order that you did. So, Mr. Arledge, you may take us on the journey first.
All right. Look, I don't know how the NCAA thing is going to impact Reggie. That's the wild card, right? I mean, the idea that Reggie Bush would not get into the College Football Hall of Fame would be a little bit absurd, being that he is, other than Tim Tebow, probably the biggest star in college football in the last 20 years. I mean, really, the guy was a rock star. He was exciting. He played on great teams. He played in two of the classic games of all time. I mean, it's an absolute no-brainer. But people like Greg will probably ruin it and not vote for Reggie out of spite. And I understand the bad feelings towards Reggie. I understand what happened, but the guy belongs in the Hall. And so, Greg, don't be like those baseball writers who leave out Bonds and Clemens. It's foolish. Mark Carrier is number 2 in terms of most likely to get in. He should also get in. He was a fantastic player who played on some very good teams and had a good pro career. And I know it's a College Football Hall of Fame, but I think that matters because it raises your profile. Jeff, an interior offensive lineman from USC teams that weren't great. And now it's been almost 40 years. I think that's a tougher sell. He was a fantastic player, and I don't doubt that he belongs in there, but clearly he's got the toughest hill to climb.
All right. I'll respond to your comments, your vicious attack on me, Chris, at the appropriate time and at my pleasure. I want to go to the guy that's written a book on USC football. Along one of it was co-authored with Lowell Schrader, the late great columnist, where I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys ranked the top players from 1 to, I don't know, how many did you have? 1 to
50,
what?
50.
1 to 50. Okay. As you look at it, who would be the 1, 2, and 3 of the group that's put in place the nomination?
Well, I'd go pretty much like we ranked them. We had Reggie number 5. We had Carrier number 13, and Jeff Briggle wasn't in the top 50. So I think that would be my 1, 2, 3. I'm very much with Chris. I mean, I think Reggie was a generational player. He's the most electric running back, I think, in USC history. And, I go back to seeing OJ and everyone, Marcus and all of them, but none of them were more electric than Reggie. All you have to do is talk to kids, even today, who are playing. The one guy they want to talk about is Reggie, the young running backs and receivers. He's the one that excited them, that wanted them to, made them want to play college football. He had a tremendous influence. And, I know how what your terms are, because we've argued this among ourselves. But I think the guy should be in the USC Hall of Fame, and I think he should certainly be in the College Football Hall of Fame. And I think Carrier, you can't forget Carrier. He's the only Trojan to win the Jim Thorpe Award, the best defensive back in the country. He was a 2-time All-American, a great player. So I think he deserves to be in also, but I don't think he'll get in before Reggie.
Mark, your thoughts?
Excuse me, I
Yeah,
want
go
to
ahead.
leave out, Jeff Briggle was a terrific player. I just think his name recognition is not there. It's gonna, if he gets in, it's gonna take a while.
Okay, Mark, what do you think? What's your rankings here?
Yeah, Steve literally took everything I was going to say. The fact that Mark Carrier wasn't a first ballot Hall of Famer, and 2-time All-American, unanimous 1 year, Thorpe Award winner. I mean, what are the parameters you're voting on, Greg? And then as far as, well, you said you vote on these things, so I need to know what's the criteria you guys are using.
Well, if I don't go tell Mark, he's going to rip me again in his column, which I got.
Well, look, Greg, I'm using your rationale. You said if USC makes it public, you'll change your mind.
No, I'm going to
Whatever.
clarify that, but go ahead.
No, that's what you said. So,
We'll clarify that when we get to it.
okay,
Are you guys going to fight again this week? Because that was really distressing for me last week.
I
mean,
saw that you actually broke out in hives. I felt guilty about that.
You should have. It was terrible to see. You guys are
it
such
wasn't
close friends
personal.
of
I still
mine.
love
too.
Greg. I just think he's crazy.
Yeah.
No, you said I was Meshuggah.
That's crazy.
Well, a lot of people don't know what that word means. Define your terms, Mark.
Back to it. And Bush should absolutely be in. I agree with Steve. First, he should have been first ballot. When you're the type of player that literally changes the game, coaches, players, fans, Reggie was must-see TV. That's Hall of Fame material. Forget the Heisman. That's a whole nother argument we can have, but the way he affected the game, absolutely. And, you know, I think Steve said it best. Jeff Bregel, it's just name recognition. It's just not there, unfortunately.
You did a lot of kissing up to Steve. I think you said 3 times that you agreed with him.
You
What's
know,
going
you're
on?
like, you know what?
He's earned it, Chris.
No, wait a minute, Chris, you're acting like a spurned lover. Because you
I'm
know that Mark worships you on the very ground you walk. And if he gives somebody else a little bit of credit, which I give Mark credit for, you immediately turn on him. And all of a sudden you're like, how could he do that to me?
Greg,
You
you
know-
know I'm a straight shooter. I'm just calling it like I see.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
that-
Chris,
well,
and I
that's-
appreciate
I'll
that.
give you credit there.
And so people understand, Meshuggah in Yiddish means crazy.
Okay, here
It's a
we
nice
go.
way
Now we're
to
gonna
say
have
it.
a Hebrew class.
I could call you a mensch, but people
Well, I've
might
been
take
called
that
that
wrong.
many times. Why don't you tell the people what a mensch means while you're at it?
It's one of the best things somebody can be called.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right,
Greg,
Greg, let's hear it.
In
Okay.
your argument, Greg, I'd like to ask you one question. How many players in the last 20 or 25 years have there been that you absolutely could not take your eyes off when they have the football?
Well, you know, I think it's a rhetorical question. I think it's a good question. I think he's a great player. I never said he wasn't a great player, but give me a chance to explain just very briefly without boring the heck out of the audience here. If USC, the school, says we recognize him as the 7th Heisman Trophy winner, I will recognize him as well. Okay, that's what I'm saying. You understand where I'm coming from. However, he cheated. He broke rules, and I don't care whether he broke a little of them, whatever. If I'm the opposing coach and I had to play against a guy that broke rules, and I'll even go as low as the high school level, and I go, we lost a game to a guy that was breaking the rules. Why did we have to lose to the player like that?
Did he
That's
break
just
the
my-
rules or did his parents break the rule?
Thank
I
you.
don't care who it was. He was aware of it.
You have to care.
No, I don't buy that at all.
Hey, Greg, you haven't answered the
I'm not
question
done
you
yet, Chris. I'm not done.
asked. Okay.
Hold on.
It feels like you should be.
Well, it may be that I feel like I should be, but I mean, I've used you as a role model, so I'm trying to emulate the way you present a case. But if they recognize him, I still don't think he should get his Heisman Trophy. But remember that Reggie Bush was on the ballot, I believe, last year for the Hall of Fame, and he did not get elected. If I'm Reggie Bush, I'm starting to ask myself, how many of those people are going to vote the same way again? What would make them change their mind? Now, should Reggie Bush be in the Hall of Fame for USC? You could debate that as well. I think he will be. I think it's a no-brainer that he will be. And if that's the way it is, I'm fine with that. But I think that unless there's some attitudes that have changed in the voting, I don't think he's a slam dunk to get in. If he gets in, more power to him. I have no problem with it if he gets in.
The question was, should he be in? Should he be
I
in,
think
Greg?
for his overall body of work from his junior year and his sophomore year, I think that things that Mark said were true, that he affected games. I think stuff that both you and Steve said, I think is true. The entire body of work. I just think there's a lot of people that were hurt by what happened. And I'm talking about players that came back the following year and couldn't go to bowl games and things of that nature because of what one player did. You can debate all you want about the NCAA being unfair, which is, it's no doubt about it. Paul Dees and the rest of that group. But I just feel that, and I want to get back to the question because that's what the question was, is I think in order, I'm going to say that Carrier gets number 1. I'm going to say that Bush is number 2 because I don't know how many votes will be changed from last year. And I do agree, unfortunately, Riegel was a hell of an offensive guard. I mean, you talk about a mauler, he was it. But like Chris pointed out, he was not on great USC teams like a Brad Buddy or a Ron Yeri. So in that context, I think Riegel, unfortunately, is number 3 in my way. We will know. I don't like the voting process. I think it's still way too regionalized with these people because I look at West Coast guys. It just seems to me like there's always something they don't get quite the support they deserve. Mark, you want to say something?
I was in it. Why do you think Carrier's not in yet?
I
What's
really
holding
don't
him
know.
back?
I think that there's a lot of safeties that get nominated, and a lot of them are coming from Ohio State or other big time, Penn State, Alabama, and it's a regional thing. I have to think that way. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that Carrier was
The
the
Thorpe
only.
Award isn't a regional award.
Wasn't Dory Jackson also a Thorpe Award winner?
He was.
There
Carrier was
was,
the first.
yeah. So but I mean, in relevance, Carrier was light years ahead of, with all respect to Dory. Dory's a great overall all-purpose player. He wasn't the true hard-hitting Mark Carrier. Mark Carrier was a stud, and he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think anybody that has watched him play would say, well, I don't know, he's not as good as Neil Cozy from Ohio State.
Probably the three best safeties in USC history are probably Ronnie Lott, Troy Polamalu, and Mark Carrier.
Yeah, I mean, it's
And that leaves some really good guys off the list. I agree with that list. There are some studs that don't make that list.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Dennis Smith.
Yeah, Dennis Smith, a Cleveland Coulter was a great one. How about Tim McDonald?
Mhm.
Another number 7, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they were all good. So we'll all have to wait to find out what the final balloting is, but it's definitely worth a discussion. Now, before we begin the second half, just a reminder to the viewers and listeners that you're watching or listening to WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle. This week's WeAreSC panelists include Marc Kulkin, Chris Arledge, Steve Bisheff. I'm Greg Katz. We also encourage you to check out the WeAreSC.com. We're part of the On3 network, and to become a subscriber to the best coverage of USC football and athletics, we invite you to participate and get a subscription. And as a bonus, for those of you that still aren't sure, WeAreSC is currently offering us WeAreSC 7-day free trial, which includes monthly or yearly payments, options to view our exclusive On3 content, which includes breaking stories, analysis, data of USC football, basketball, and the balance of USC athletics. All right, let's kick off the second half, the third quarter question with this. Panel, Lincoln Riley has elected not to have a special teams coach, but rather has divided up special team responsibilities among his staff. If you were the head coach of USC, would you hire a special teams coach or divide it up amongst those responsibilities amongst your staff? We're curious to know. Marc Kulkin, you're the head coach of USC. Which way are you going on special teams?
Look, we had Sean Snyder last year, who history has shown has been a guru special teams coach. He had little effect on the team. Before him, John Baxter, who was also highly respected as a special teams coach. Look, at this point, as long as they're trotting 11 guys out there for kickoffs and for punt returns and coverage, I'm okay with the spike committee thing. It's different than what we've been using. So let's see how it works out. I'll change my tune when we need to, perform an onside kick in a close game. So we don't get to see what's going on during spring camp, during practice. We saw no special teams work. I mean, I saw the jugs machine punting and kicking the ball more than I saw the kickers doing it. That just tells you, I don't know what's going on with special teams right now. We know the assignments with the coaches. We know which players are going to be doing which right now, but that's it. So it's a different strategy, that's for sure.
All right, Chris, you are a player, played at college ball. Would you have preferred having a special teams coach or have it responsibility to different position coaches? But you're the head coach now at USC. What are you going to choose?
If I'm the head coach, I have a special teams coach. I'm a little bit surprised that Riley doesn't have room for one, being that he's the offensive coordinator and the quarterbacks coach. You would think that would open up a couple of slots and make room for a special teams coach. And it's a little bit strange that that he has so many guys coaching the wide receivers and tight ends, for example. But that being said, there are plenty of successful coaching staffs that divvy it up amongst the various coaches. So this can work. I'm just a little bit surprised he feels the need to do it this way. And Mark, the reason that they're not practicing kicking is because USC is not going to kick this year. They're going to go. They're not punting. They're not punting, and they're going for 2 every time.
That's why he doesn't have a special teams coach. He plans on scoring touchdowns.
All right, Steve Bisheff, now you have covered not only college football and USC specifically, but you also are very, very well respected for the NFL and having covered the Chargers and the Rams, et cetera. So I'm making you the head coach at USC. Are you having a special teams coach, or are you dividing up amongst position coaches?
Well, I absolutely have one. I don't get it. How many coaches now do they have on football teams of this caliber? Some of them have 25 coaches, it seems like. You can easily make one your special teams coach, find a guy who's experienced in it and use it. I think special teams have always been underrated. I can go back to years of covering George Allen, who had some strange ideas about a lot of things, but he worshipped special teams. You know, some great coaches have started that way. Dick Vermeil started as a special teams coach. I think it's really important. I think, you know, at a school that has so many resources, what is your reason for not having one? I don't know. I don't get it. I think splitting it up takes away the coach's responsibilities for whatever else they're doing. Let the special teams coach concentrate on that one thing. To not have one at this level is really strange, I think.
Well, I have mixed feelings on it. I think the 2 special teams coaches we've had recently in the last 5, 7, 6 years, I think some of the stuff that they did really well, like blocking kicks. I think that was well, but then they were deficient on kickoff returns. It was almost non-existent. Punt returns was kind of like no value. So it was like it wasn't balanced. I guess you could say it's a no-win situation in some ways, because if you have great special teams, it's because you got great players that are doing what they've been told to do. But I think if I was the coach, and that's the question, I would hire a special teams coach, because I wouldn't want to take away from the other coaches what they're doing. And it's really about hiring somebody that really is the best of the best, if you can find it. Because, you know, we were told that Baxter was the best of the best, and then John Snyder was supposed to be the best out of the Big 12, and you know, it just never seemed to live up to the hype, in my opinion. But
you know,
I would hire a special team.
What worries me in that respect too is we went through the years with Sarkisian and Kiffin as coaches who only thought about the offense, spent all their time, went to practices, all kinds of practices, and they never left the offense. They never even walked over to watch the defense or the special teams or anything else. And it worries me just a little bit. Lincoln Riley comes in with this reputation, well-deserved as an offensive guru, but is he going to be so concentrated on that he doesn't care or isn't as interested in some of the other things like special teams? I just think it's a little warning light. Maybe I'm, off and it's not going to matter, but it bothers me a little bit.
Well, I tell you, it's going to bother a lot of people if things go south,
right,
in certain areas, because they are going to get, USC fans are smart fans. They have been through Carroll, or John McKay, they know when things are right. And as soon as something doesn't go right, they're going to point it out immediately. And the
Lose
way
a game on a block punt, right?
yeah, and I'll tell you, the way social media is today,
Well,
you don't have to wait for tomorrow's newspaper to find
No.
out how upset people are going, well, why don't they have a special team coach? You know, the kick return game is, you know, is horrible.
right.
And then Riley is opening himself up to some real scrutiny
Absolutely.
on that. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's get ready here for what many people call the highlight of the show. I think that's debatable, but we begin the fourth quarter, ladies and gentlemen, of Inside the Trojans Huddle with the official symbolic Chris Arledge Coliseum torch being lit at this very moment. As we all know that normally in the Coliseum, the Trojan Marching Band is playing a rendition of the William Tell Overture. We don't have that, but we do have the incomparable Chris Arledge with the Inside the Trojans Huddle version of Musings with Arledge. So Chris, we've opened the gate. We released the Kraken. What do you got for us?
Hey, no disclaimer this week, Greg. You should give the disclaimer.
Yes, I think that that's an excellent point. Anything that comes out of Chris's orifice, we are not responsible for any of his comments. I know that Marc personally has been, I think he went under the table on one of the ones you did. I wasn't sure, or maybe he was just getting some more candy to eat while we're on the air. So Chris, take it away, buddy.
Thanks, Greg. This week, I'm going to say no to politics, but I'm going to say yes to history. Last week, we had that halftime question about changing Traveler's name. And while I'm very cooperative normally, as I think everyone here would agree, I refuse to engage in that question, but I didn't explain why. So I'm going to start by giving a serious or at least semi-serious explanation for why I simply won't engage in the discussion. Now, I understand, of course, that there's some people who believe Traveler's name should be changed because Traveler was also the name of Robert E. Lee's horse. Now, I will concede that Traveler is white. He's very white. I don't think he means anything by it. And more importantly, nobody seriously believes that Traveler is intended to be or is an effort to promote the antebellum South, slavery, white supremacy, Robert E. Lee, or the cause for which Lee fought. USC's mascot simply shares a name with Robert E. Lee's favorite horse. That's it. If we discover tomorrow that Stalin had a dog named Buddy, I don't know that all of us would have to go out and change our names from Buddy to something else just because they share a name with Stalin. And look, here's what really matters. And this is why I didn't want to engage in this last week. Not everything in life has to be about politics. And our modern politics, which is increasingly dysfunctional, shrill, and irrational, is actually quite disturbing sometimes. If we choose to, we can still have some things that aren't polluted by the talking heads we see on Fox News or NBC. This is one of the, or MSNBC, I should say. This is one of the great things about sports. It doesn't have to be hostage to our political disputes if we choose to keep it that way. We can come together, black and white, rich and poor, Republican and Democrat. We can put aside all the things that divide us and we can stand together, lock arms, join with the spirit of Troy, raise our voices as one and sing UCLA Sucks. An activity that is fun, uplifting, and educational. And isn't that what this is all about? There are people left and right that want to inject politics into every nook and cranny of life, that want to bring that divisiveness into everything we do. We don't have to go along with it. Some things are too pure, too lovely to spoil with politics. So I refuse to be drawn in. Now, while I say no to politics, I say yes to history. Now, Greg, you probably think that because I'm right so often that I get tired of it. You might even think that I'm past giving out the I told you so's. But you'd be wrong, of course. Not because I need these things for myself, but because history is important. And those who ignore it are doomed to repeat it. In 2002, as the Paul Hackett era was limping to its inevitable ugly conclusion, There was no shortage of people who had all kinds of excuses for USC football. They told us USC football needs to get reasonable expectations. You can't win there anymore. The facilities are bad. The fan support is bad. It's time to face reality, we were told. And then Pete Carroll came in and stormed through the college football world like Caesar through Gaul. But some people never learn. All it takes is another downturn and the same excuses come out. I'm not talking about just from opposing fan bases who get joy out of it and really want to believe that USC is over. I'm talking about from Trojans. Well, we don't have the money. The demographics have changed too much. All the players from the Southeast. We can't win anymore. We might as well shut down. 7-5 is probably the best we can do. For years, I used my column at WeAreSC to fight against this false perspective, to explain what was happening and why. And true, over the years, the number of excuse makers and clay coddlers declined, but the excuses still linger. Now, USC is on the verge of winning again. And those of us who argued for years against all these excuses are now told that we should just move on. Leave the past in the past, they say. Is that how it works in the real world? You argue with your wife for months on end about something really important. You're eventually proven completely and utterly wrong. And then you respond without an admission or even an apology. We're moving on. Why are you so focused on the past? No, listen, just so there's no confusion, the single biggest factor in determining college football success is the head football coach. Other things matter, but if you're a blue blood program, a good coach will win. If you have a bad coach, you might not. Oklahoma went 12-22 under John Blake. From 97 to 2007, Alabama went 74-61, a winning percentage barely higher than Paul Hackett's. All of the blue bloods, all of them, Notre Dame, Michigan, Miami, USC, the two I just named, they've all had their disastrous periods. They ended them by hiring people like Bob Stoops and Nick Saban and Brian Kelly and other people who can coach. If you do what USC did and you hire a guy to run a $100 million enterprise who would struggle to succeed at the night manager at McDowell's, you're probably counting trouble. And I don't think you need to go very deep in the bag of excuses to explain that. By the way, let's stop with the don't blame Clay, blame the guys who hired him nonsense. Why do we have to be so selective? Why can't we blame many people? Don't blame the waiter who messed up your order 4 straight times. Blame the guy who hired him. Okay, fine. The waiter wasn't responsible for the bad hiring decision, but wasn't he at least a little bit responsible for bringing me the wrong food 4 straight times? Look, when you say don't blame Clay, blame Pat and Lynn, the problem you have is then you can also say don't blame Pat and Lynn, blame the guy who hired them. Or don't blame them, blame the people who hired the guy who hired them. It's a never-ending search. We go higher and higher up the pecking order, searching for that apex clown, the one guy we can blame. I say no. I say blame them all. There's room for more than one clown. I've been to the circus. You can fit dozens of clowns in a single Volkswagen. And for the better part of a decade, USC was that Volkswagen, spitting out clown after clown after clown. Max, the I'll do anything for a donation clown. Pat, the smug referee attacking clown. Lynn, the skip the work to sign autographs clown. Sark, the party clown. And Clay, the aw shucks, thank God I'm a country boy clown. And USC fans wanted to complain about demographics? Ever since we hired Ronald McDonald to run our company, I just can't understand what's gone wrong. Now, why do I care about this? Is it because I like to beat up on Clay and Pat? Yes, but that's not the only reason. At some point, we're going to face this situation again. And once again, we will be tempted to make excuses and start being apologists for ineptitude. And I don't want that to happen. Fate didn't make USC football bad. Neither did demographics or money or facilities. Never forget, USC chose it. Let's not choose it again. From now on, I want my USC football clown-free, excuse-free, and politics-free.
Very good.
Standing ovation. Can you believe that? Well, thank you, Chris. That was very insightful as usual. So with that, let us go into the fourth quarter. Now, this is, I think, an interesting one. Panel, Who is, in your opinion, the most underrated USC Trojans offense and defensive football player of the modern era? And I'm defining the modern era as the beginning of the John McKay era. Let us start off with an absolute historian, an authority on the subject. We've already talked about his books. Hopefully he sold another 10 on eBay. Steve Bisheff, who is the most underrated offensive and defensive player since the McKay era started?
Well, I gave this a lot of thought. Obviously, it's very hard to say the most, but I picked a couple that I think are greatly underappreciated and underrated, I think, for what they've done. The first one, since I can go back a little longer than some people back to the McKay era, I honestly believe Pete Beathard, the first quarterback, the quarterback of McKay's first national championship team, is really underrated by most people who follow USC football. A lot of them never saw him play, so I understand that. But those of us who did realize that this guy was a really terrific college football player. He played in the NFL also, but he was a great college quarterback. He could run, he could pass, and he'd be tailor-made for today's college football style. He would be a great quarterback in the wide open pass, and wanting the quarterback who could also run, he'd be terrific. Defensively, geez, there were so many guys I thought about. The one that popped in my head, who I always thought was underappreciated, even though he was an All-American his senior year, was Matt Grudegood. He wasn't big, he wasn't fast, in either category, he wasn't big enough or fast enough to play in the NFL, but he was just a terrific college football player. He might have been the best open field tackler for the past 25 years. He was always there. Pete Carroll moved him into a new position, completely new position. He played the hybrid linebacker / safety, and he was a dominant player. He made tackles, made interceptions. He came up with key plays. Wherever the ball was, that's where he was. And I think when people look back and want to name defensive players who were great, somehow he gets forgotten. I don't think he should be. I think he was a great player.
Excellent choices. Excellent choices. Mark, who do you think?
Yeah, there are just so many correct answers. I'm gonna really try and stretch it this one on offense and say Lendale White. People forget he played with 2 Heisman winners. And he gets so little credit for how productive and how efficient and how great that offense was. Now, you think about their comeback win down in Tempe against Arizona State. He was in charge of that. The game he had against Oklahoma. I can go on and on and on. Had he come back his senior year, he legitimately had a chance to win USC's 3rd Heisman in a 4-year period, whatever that was. I mean, that's how good he was. And I don't think people really, Trojan fans appreciate it, but I don't think the rest of the country truly understands how much and how great Lendale White contributed to those great Pete Carroll teams. On defense,
don't you think
I'm
the
sorry?
one play at the end of the Texas game?
Yeah, well, whose fault? Well, yeah, I'm not going there. I'm not going to go there, Steve, because I feel you. On defense, you know what? Jason Sehorn. He didn't do anything as far as, getting any awards, but I think he led USC 1 year in interceptions. Played cornerback, hell of an athlete. And in 2 years, he was able to capitalize that and turn himself into a pretty darn good NFL cornerback with the New York Giants. So, yeah, those are my 2 guys.
Well put. I think you could make an argument for both of those guys. All right. Speaking of arguments, Chris, what's your argument for offense and defense most underrated since the McKay era?
I'm going to go on offense with Ricky Irvins. It's hard as a USC running back to get up in the lists of the greats because USC has had so many fantastic players. But Ricky Irvins, a late 80s, I think he played, I think 89 would have been his last year at Troy, was a fantastic back, a little bowling ball of a back, Rose Bowl MVP against Michigan, really good football player, and a guy that doesn't get talked about a lot just because of USC's storied history at that position. And I would say that you could make a case that Gary Wellman, a wide receiver on those same USC teams, might be another guy to consider in terms of underrated. Those guys were fantastic football players. Defensively, I'm going to go with Kevin Ellison, safety under Pete Carroll. So many of those Pete Carroll defensive guys have become household names. And I suspect that most people who aren't USC fans probably don't know about Kevin Ellison. That guy was a great football player, smart, in the right place all the time, a big time hitter. Back when you could still hit wide receivers coming across the middle, and Kevin Ellison loved to do it. So those are my two guys.
Deshaun Jackson remembers Kevin Ellison quite well.
Yes, he does.
All right, I am going to wrap this fourth quarter up with my views. I kind of thought of what Steve Bisheff said, but I'm not going to go with Pete Beathard, who would fit in perfectly in today's game. I'm going with Mike Ray, the quarterback of the 72 national champions. I think Mike Ray was that workman-like quarterback who just absolutely was a winner. He also kicked PATs and anything else. And for some reason, people always think of Pat Hayden and the 74 national champions. But geez, Mike Ray, from the time I saw him play at Lakewood High School all the way through, and actually did go to the NFL. I believe he was with the Raiders for a period of time. I think that he was just like the consummate college football player that was so underrated. And he was surrounded by great names, legendary names on offense for USC. Obviously, Anthony Davis, obviously the great linemen that they had, Sam Bam Cunningham. But he was really, really a special football player. Defensively, I know this is going to come as a shock, and people are going to go, come on, Katz, you can't do that. But I am going to do that. I think the most underrated player I've seen at USC is Kevin Bruce. I really think so. This is a guy that made all conference in 75, team captain, and he is overlooked in 74 when he was a starter on the national championship team. He really was, I think even in those days, somewhat undersized. He played with the type of passion that Grudegood did, or we could say Grudegood played like with Kevin's passion. Kevin Bruce, so smart. I mean, you all know him. Kevin can discuss any subject at anything and be intelligent doing it. He told me stories how he had to take a hold of players in 74 and throw them off the field because they weren't doing what he felt they should be doing. And the coaches trusted him. And, Kevin was an all-CIF linebacker at La Cunada St. Francis High School, but he wasn't a household name. In fact, for a period of time, he wasn't coming to USC. He was probably going to be at Stanford. And it was only because I think McKay knew his dad, and Kevin's dad was quite an accomplished football player, I think at the University of Washington, that even Kevin, he was kind of the quote, toss in, the throw in recruit at the time. And, when people say, Greg, why are you so uptight and angry about the way SC has performed the last 10, 15 years? If you sat down and had a conversation with Kevin Bruce, and you really realize what a national championship team player and a captain is supposed to look like and sound like. Nothing like we've seen the last 10 years, I understand. But you would really be inspired to be around him if he was one of your teammates. So again, please don't throw any apples at me and say you picked him because he's on your staff. No, I picked him because I really do believe he was a fantastic football player that didn't get the notoriety and was very underrated in my opinion. So Anyway, they're all were good answers. I think Mark said it best. You know, there really is no right answers because there's so many good ones, which takes us to overtime. Now, overtime, it's time to answer some viewer questions. We'll have some limited questions this time around. This is a free-for-all panel format. I don't need to choose anybody to start it off. If you think you have an answer, just jump right in. For those of you that are listeners or viewers, to submit a question, just go to wearesc.com, go to the Gary P message board or the WeAreSC members message board. From there, you'll see the topic threads regarding questions for Inside the Trojans Huddle. And we'll try to get to as many people as we can. If we don't get to you one particular week, some of the questions you can use the next week. So here's question number one. This is from HUD in San Diego. Which assistant coach will have the biggest impact on developing the potential of players they coach? Anybody have a thought on this?
First of all, HUD, perfectly formatted question. Well done. I think Sean Nua is going to have the biggest impact with the defensive line, only because he has to have the biggest impact. I think it's a given, you know, Lincoln Riley is going to use his Midas touch with the quarterbacks. So I'm going to go with Nua. They can get that defensive line solidified. I think the defense will improve by 10 points over last year.
Anybody else have some comments on it?
I think Josh Henson on the offensive line is really crucial because everything Riley wants to do will depend on the offensive line performing well. If it doesn't, it could all fizzle. So I think tremendous impact if he can get it to play the way USC offensive lines used to play, then there's no ceiling on what they could do on offense.
I actually think it's a tie between Nua and Henson, because not only are those the positions that everyone is looking at, because we all acknowledge that those are really critical positions, but also the fact that they are the recruiters for their position and how they can recruit. People tell me they're still worried about offensive line recruiting. Well, we'll see how that plays out. And Nua, I really kind of agree with Mark on this one. I think that he really could be kind of an underrated coach to bring in the type of talent, and it'll be fascinating. Chris, I think did you want to add on to this a little bit?
Well, I was just going to say that I hope in some ways it's Dante Williams. I mean, last year the corner play especially was so bad. And I think everybody here is hoping that it was because he was stretched too thin with his head coaching duties. He couldn't pay attention to his group. I don't know if that's true. I hope that he can coach as well as he can recruit, but we need to be much, much better in the defensive backfield. So I hope we're going to see a huge step forward, even though it's the exact same guy we had at the spot last year.
Isn't it interesting that we're focused on Henson and his group when last year probably the offensive line group was the best performing group on the team? When you think about overall, that's the one group that looked good, especially once Drake London went down.
All right.
I just wanted to throw that out there. That's all.
We'll take that under advisement, I think.
Nothing to advise, just throwing it out there. I think he's actually got an easy job this year, is all I'm trying to say.
Okay. All right. Question number 2 from SC 93er in Pasadena. If you're Lincoln Riley, do you open the playbook and run up the score on Rice, or do you play plain vanilla on offense so Stanford can't gain any schematic advantage from watching the game film? Comments?
I think you have to remember what game this is. If this was the opening game of your 3rd or 4th season, yeah, I think you keep it under wraps and you don't show the playbook. This is a game where everyone's going to be looking all over the country, all over the city, the state, all over the country is going to wonder, what does Lincoln Riley's team look like? You can't play real conservative. I think you have to show them what USC is about to become and what you've done. So I don't think it can be you can keep it as much under wraps as you would if you'd been here for a few years.
USC can actually drop in the polls the first week if they don't cover the spread against Rice.
No,
That's what they're going to be gauged against.
Well, it's only what, 34-point favorite?
Well, Greg, you've got everybody scared. Has the line moved?
I've been trying to get the attention on Rice, and all I've taken is a bunch of comments of the negative variety. And hopefully people will wake up that this is a serious threat to moving moving on the rankings. If we win by 31, people are gonna go, oh man, they suck. Chris, what do you think?
I think you should stop talking about Rice. By the way, I don't think you've ever watched a complete Rice football game. I don't think that's ever happened. I know you.
Okay,
Pump
wait a
them
minute.
up.
You're a lawyer. Now that is
No.
that is not based on fact. That is your opinion.
Am I right though?
I don't have to answer it. I'm not on trial.
That tells me what I need to know.
Well,
Yeah,
it tells
look.
you what you think you need to know. But
Look,
go, please continue.
Lincoln Riley is selling sizzle and he's selling excitement. He's going to open it up, and USC is going to be fun to watch because they need to be. I mean, that's really, he needs people to be excited about USC football, fans, recruits, everybody else. Nick Saban can afford to have a boring win in his opener if he wants it, but Lincoln Riley can't. And I suspect that he can take it to Rice without pulling out the Fumblerooskies or the Statue of Liberty. But he's not gonna run off tackle 70 times. It's gonna be fun.
I think that Lincoln Riley will scale back what he would do in a different situation. I think he will open it up more because I think he is selling his program. And you know that on Sports Center and some of the others, they're going to go right to SC and Rice because people are going to want to know what happened. I mean, so much of SC has been in the off season that people are just going to want to know, did they, they beat the spread, like Mark said. I think they have to beat the spread. And so people will stay excited. I think recruits will be watching that game. So it's a bigger game than playing a Rice team that really should get blown out. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it. Now, our final question is from Touchdown for USC. I know this sounds more like a medical question, but is there a cure for Trojans envy? I know you all wanted to take, you're trying to,
Yeah.
What do they mean by envy?
Clay, the answer is Clay Helton. That's the cure for Trojans envy. Nobody envied us while he was around.
good
That
answer.
is the perfect answer to end right there.
Well, on that note, all I'll say is the more SC wins, the more there's going to be envy. And I couldn't be personally happier than that. So on that note, we will close it up. It's a wrap for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. A big thank you to this week's panel of Marc Kulkin, Chris Arledge, and Steve Bisheff. Great job, guys. And a special big thank you to all of you for watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. Until next Tuesday, this is your host, Greg Katz, reminding you all to fight on, everybody.